Joshua Sherman. Welcome.
Hello, Max.
So yes, some innovative things that we're doing as far as locally to address the overdose crisis, right? Enter both of you guys and the QRT, Quick Response Team experts operated in conjunction, Portsmouth Fire Department, EMS first responders, the counseling center. So you had referenced some of those initial meetings of like getting together and talking through some things. So talk about from your perspective some of those like initial ideas and how we got rolling.
Right. I think the main purpose of me showing up were selfish reasons. Once,
I appreciate the honesty.
Right?
I
think I just wanted I wanted to not feel the way that I was feeling about the station that I was in, and then it was obvious like that's not going away.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to figure out how to deal with it. And so what I think for just me or my personality, I have to figure out solutions to things. I have to move the puzzle pieces around.
Yeah.
And I think what had happened was I think the QRT came out of a real confusion because I didn't understand what it was that you did.
Right.
I just saw you in everything.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to start a bike medic program.
Yeah,
for
I remember
the
that.
fire department.
And you got a sweet bike.
I got 3 sweet bikes.
That I saw you at the Gauntlet last year in that thing. That's a Cadillac.
It's awesome. And so I'm trying to get some support for that. And I think you thought that I wanted to do something different. And I honestly, that's how that developed. It's like, well, we want to get involved at the counseling center. I'm like, what do you guys want to do? It's like, we want to start plugging in to like the emergency response. And I'm like, yeah, you can do it with, I'll get you guys a bicycle. And Max is like, no, we're not riding bicycles. So that's how that was just kind of a real quick conversation after a CrossFit workout, which is horrible, which you're
real vulnerable.
I hate
you know what I mean? It's a real vulnerable.
That's another community that needs a lot of help.
They're also
then it started to just kind of start as an idea. It was like this little burning ember, and every time Max and I would get together, and then more people came in from the counseling center. And the idea, which I thought was really cool, and I've had to not defend it, but I've had to really draw a solid line, was there's all these communities within the city of Portsmouth and all these entities in the city of Portsmouth and all this, and they're like, we want to do that. But do you really want to do it, or do you just want your name on it? And
do you
that
like
was
the
big
idea
thing.
of it?
And so when we got together for the quick response team, it was one of those deals where, what if we showed up on scene? Because at the time, there were a lot of jurisdictions, and especially there were a lot of issues with first responders and interacting with a lot of different groups, and it wasn't going well. And they're like, well, you guys need to be able to counsel this individual. So if I show up and I'm doing everything I can to help you, and that's how that started. And so my adrenaline's going, and I'm thinking in a very one-dimensional space. And they're like, okay, so after you get that set to the side, now I need you to talk to her about her problems and help her out. And I'm like, that's not human nature.
Yeah, could you brush up on your motivational interviewing skills, meet the person where they're at, increase their motivation,
so that was
the engagement treatment?
That was what I had learned in having a good relationship with you guys and the counseling center. And you were the only group that was willing to put in the amount of work necessary to get something like that going. And I was just trying to do something to make sense of my world. And so it's like, well, I'm gonna get this done on my end. And you guys impressively just moved forward. And there were so many obstacles in the beginning. It's like, well, because on my end, it's like, well, you can't have these people here. And I'm like, but I need them here. I was like, can we deputize them? And they're like, nope. And I'm like, so you're just saying absolutely not. And I think we got to a point where it came to a halt. And then we pushed right through that, and it was one of those deals where like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this. And I hear what you're saying. No.
Right.
but go ahead and stop us. And once we set that precedent, it's like you're going to have to make an effort to stop us because these people are coming to the scenes anyways. And that's what made the difference. And it wasn't me. It was the people at the counseling center and their passion for actually getting in there and getting their hands dirty and helping people. That's what made the difference. It was nothing that I did. I just held the door open, and you guys came.
You did a good job of that, though. Like, I think you did a great job of that. So, like, talk about, Billie, from your perspective, how QRT works from how do we get a call to know where to show up, to then the process of what Josh's guys in the fire department do, to then what our people do. Just talk us through like a run, if you will.
We have a scanner that they have linked with the fire department, and when we have an overdose response call or a call that is possibly an overdose call, we go to the scene. We stay out of the way until it's cleared by the EMS to allow us to talk to the person.
So first things first, you just get the call that somebody might need you, and then you go there, and then you guys do your thing.
Sure, it's a partnership.
Yes.
It's not as simple as, fix.
No.
All right, we're clear.
See you later.
See you guys later. It's never that.
Yeah.
It's kind of becoming a community, I think.
Okay. So then you get to the scene.
Yes.
They get the person stabilized.
They get them stabilized. They ask them if they're willing just to go to treatment, if they're willing to get help. And 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. Sometimes you get the ones that's just not reluctant.
Yeah.
But it is great when you get that one that is. So we come in and we'll sit there and we'll talk to them and we'll give them options. Options. Do they need detox first is what we find out after they're okay. And then we roll from that. If they don't need detox, do they need stabilization? Do they need a bed? Where do we want to go? And the best part that I like about it is, yes, I'm an employee of the counseling center, but for somebody to go through QRT, they don't have to stay with the counseling center. Right. We're going to do what best fits that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
The individual.
Yeah.
So that's like when Josh was talking earlier, how all these people before wanted to help because they per se wanted their name on it.
Yeah.
And that's the best part I like about it, because people sometimes try to presume that they come and we show up and we make them go here or there, and we don't. That's one of the best things I like about it.
Yeah.
We're going to suit the individual wherever they need to go.
And that's like a client's right to choose, right? Like
Absolutely.
The client right to self-determination. So just because we're the ones that are in conjunction, if you say you want to go to, hey, or I've been here before, I'm already enrolled here, I would like to go to this place, like, we'll help you do whatever
Absolutely.
you want to do, right?
Yes.
I think it's also one of the things that spurred along this, hey, go to the scene. So previously we had the opioid response team, the ORT, and the way that ORT worked, the Adams board helped us set that up. They secured some funding to get the staff on board to do that. And so the way that would work is EMS came to the scene, stabilized the person. They agreed to go to the hospital.
Yes.
Once they went to the hospital, they went to the ER, they got checked into the ER, they probably saw a nurse, then they probably saw a doctor, then they probably saw the nurse again, and then they probably saw the social worker.
And they saw the door.
And then the social, we'll get there. And then the social worker said, hey, are you interested in going into treatment? And they said, yeah, sure thing. So then the social worker put in a call to us, the ORT. Then we had an hour to get to the ER. So then we went to the ER and we screened the person, and then we did the thing.
Yes.
That's a lot of steps.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot that can go wrong. So then what happened with the opioid response team is we stopped getting calls from the ER. We must have solved the opioid epidemic, the overdose crisis, right? We fixed it. We're not getting any more calls in the ORT. Well, what was happening is as overdoses became more prevalent and more commonplace, people just started signing their AMA paperwork.
And they're out.
I'm not going to the hospital, right?
And that's what we had found out. So in speaking with the counseling center, and that was important to understand, what are your capabilities and what do people need for definitive care? Yeah. And that's our big thing. We get people to definitive care. So if they're having a heart attack, we don't take them to an urgent care. We take them to a place with a cath lab.
Right.
They need to be fixed.
Yes.
And if someone's suffered a traumatic injury or a brain injury, we don't take them to SOMC. Nothing wrong with SOMC.
Right.
They're not a level 1 trauma center.
Right.
We fly them to Grant or we fly them to Cabell. because we put people in definitive care. We've done that with every patient across the board except for people with drug abuse issues.
That's wild,
and their
man.
definitive
It
care
really
is
wild.
not the hospital. And so these were the holes that I had to fill in for myself because I don't get it. And really nobody gets it. Or not nobody, but in my world, very few people get it because they don't take the time to say what's going on, and they don't have a vested interest like I do right now. And so that was what we found out. So meeting with the clients at the Hawk and the people that are actually going through this, it's hell for them. And saying, what's your problem? Why won't you work with us here? You know, we're trying to help you. And they're like, you guys are horrible. And I said, well, but we'll take you to the hospital. Well, the hospital's horrible.
They're worse.
And I'm like, I don't understand. So then they explain it to us. And it's just the institution itself. It's not designed to treat people with the multitude of issues that they have when they're dealing with substance abuse disorders. Because it's not just a drug. It could be physical issues. It could be emotional issues, mental health issues. We don't have the system for it. And so to bridge that gap or to fill in that hole, that's where the counseling center was able to provide, and this was huge, medical assisted therapies and comfort care medications. Because what we found out, the reason they were leaving the hospital is because they were withholding comfort care medications and they were detoxing.
Well, and that's something that Narcan does, right? So talk about what Narcan does when I've been in an overdose and I'm administered Narcan.
It automatically blocks the opioids, so you go straight into withdrawals.
So you've been from as intoxicated as you've ever been in
Possibly
your whole
can
entire
be.
life
To straight cold turkey, cold chills, sweating, vomiting,
severe withdrawal symptoms, right?
Yes.
And so then I go to an institution that's supposed to provide me medical care.
And they're not.
And the traditional medical system, you know, like they I don't think historically know really what to do with people with substance use disorders when we kind of wander in, you know what I mean? Because there is a lot going on.
Hey,
you know?
it is.
But yeah, so it's like that's huge. Then it's like I'm immediately in severe withdrawals. I need access to something that is going to mitigate that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we come in when we're able to be right there on the scene, because they are going through it, like then and there. And we're able to offer a detox to them, you know, and we take them straight to, you know, treatment if they're willing to go. So, and it gives us that window that wasn't there before. You know,
there's a lot less that can go wrong. We shrunk that window,
and
right?
they're like, I just basically died, and like I got to do something different, and that window is so small. So to be able to be right there when it's open and they're ready to go, it makes a huge difference in whether we get them there or not, whether they stay or not, whether they get detox or not, to be able to say and get their mind straight and have some clarity.
Talk about some of like the resources that it takes, because this also isn't like Billie goes to every call. This is like a huge infrastructure of people that are like on the team, that are manning these radios, that are going out all over the city. Talk about your team specifically a little bit and their role.
There's a team of 10 people underneath me, and 2 people work in shifts together in the evening, and normally there's somebody on call with me during the day too. They take turns doing that. And I work 8 to 4 predominantly Monday through Friday, or whatever the hours is that they need me. And then at 4 o'clock the 2 other people take over, and they run it until 8 o'clock in the morning. And it just helps because it is so predominantly like they're working sometimes 24-hour shifts.
24.
And you know, I can imagine having to be on that 24-hour shift every day, all day long, with as much stuff as they have going on. So it definitely does break it up a little bit, and you're not getting so overwhelmed with the emotional part of it, because it takes a toll when you go to an overdose scene and it's somebody you grew up with, and or even somebody that just relapsed in recovery, and they're devastated, and you know, so being able to be right there on that spot when that window's open is absolutely the best thing. And I like the way our QRT is ran as well. We're not ran like other QRTs in the state.
Sure.
You know, when I was in active addiction, if a cop showed up at my door, I'm not answering it. Like, I'm not opening the door, and everybody better be quiet while they're out there. So that's, I think, makes ours where it's a lot. I'm not saying it's more productive because I'm not sure like what other places statistics are, but I know it's very productive in Soda County to be able to have somebody who's like us show up, and not it be somebody with a badge on just because they have a polo shirt. Like, we still know they're a cop. We're not answering the door, you know. And I think theirs is ran the old way too. In a lot of the counties, they don't go out till the next day.
They respond within like 24 to 72 hours.
And I think that is an important point to mention. And don't sell that program short and what you guys do short, because it is more effective. The data has proven it. So when the counseling center sent me the first runs of data on, because I said, hey, listen, if this isn't working, I'm not doing it, because it's too much for me to have to fight the system for something that's not effective. Sure. So you guys sent me the data, and I'm like, I need the data. I think it was like, I need something for the month. He's like, that is the month. I thought it was like a several. And I'm like, well, give me the correct data, because that's not right. So running it back into our system, and you know, how accurate is this? It was extremely accurate. It was almost run for run.
Yes.
And so I'm matching runs up. I'm like, yeah, that's how many runs we had. And so I called back. I'm like, you had this many people go to treatment. And he's like, yeah. But he said the more impressive number, you know, you can throw anyone in a car and take them to a treatment center. He said, look at the next group of numbers, and that many people have stayed for at least 2 weeks. And which is huge.
Absolutely.
Because that gets them, you know, they'll stay anywhere for a few days while they're detoxing. But they're staying on. That was the effective part. The post overdose response teams that go to people's houses, I think there's a time and a place for it. I think that sending counselors to courts and talking to people that have been in legal issues because of drug abuse, I think there's a time and place for that. But the gap that we have is that emergency response. And so when I'm talking to people from other agencies and different groups, and they're like, you know, this is what we do. And what are you doing? And I'm like, well, we're doing this. And they say, you're doing what? Like, how do you get these people to show up? Like, do they ride in the squad? I'm like, no, they have vehicles, and they respond, non-emergency. You guys drive safe. You're not blowing through lights. And you get there when you get there. And we have adjusted our treatment. So instead of dumping Narcan and running away, we give the proper dose of Narcan that you're supposed to give, and we ventilate people with oxygen, and we monitor their vitals, and we bring them, instead of knocking them out of that really quick, we bring them up gradually, because it's more productive, and it's a better form of treatment.
And that was a protocol you changed after the initial meeting at
because they said, we will not stay on scene and wait for the QRT. And I said, you won't. I said, I bet you will. And so I went to the medical director and I said, Doc, great guy, Dr. Barhorse. I said, I think that we need to adjust the way that we're treating overdoses. Because just from a physiological standpoint, this doesn't make any sense. So can we do this? And he's like, yeah, it's a much better idea. I'm like, well, that's what we're going to do. So 8 to 15 minutes we'll be on scene. Is that acceptable? He's like, yeah. So that's what it takes you, 8 to 15 minutes.
For sure.
So now, our guys,
turns out,
and having them stay on scene and having them treat people with dignity, which is huge for us, and to be able to empathize, and then having them watch the way that you interact with these patients has changed, is beginning to create a cultural change within our department. Which that's the cool part. Because that's what we need.
You know, and that's where our team is. They work really well with you guys, and that's what is great about the QRT team on this end. Everybody wants to do this. It's not something that they don't want to do, or they're not willing to help, or they're like, oh my gosh, I got to get in my car. They're excited to go and help somebody, and then when we get there, they're excited because we're not met with animosity, or the EMS are waiting and they're like, hey, they're ready to talk to you now, and they're treating people with dignity, and I think it works really well together. It's pretty amazing to see, considering where it was years ago.
Well, that's one of those things too, is like, this is a team that is it's like people want on it. It's like there's only 10 spots, and there's like a list of people. It's like, hey, if somebody ever drops off, like, I'll get you on.
I get calls all the
So it's
time.
like, well, how do you get them there? It's like, well, turns out, because the other part too, and I believe the statistic is correct, if not all, the majority of the QRT response team are all people that are in recovery as well.
Yeah.
So it's that like grassroots, peer-led kind of thing, right? And then I think the other part of that too is that everybody has been like trained in what to expect when they're on a scene, and how to act, and what to do, and who to talk to, and then they're all credentialed by the Chemical Dependency Board, or the counselor, social worker, marriage
And
family
they've had
therapy
CPR
board,
as well.
and CPR training. So that's like another cool part, I think, of the kind of what further makes us unique. Within that kind of response
and we work together. I'm a CPR instructor, so if they need CPR training for their members, then I can go do it at no cost. We have the equipment at the station, and I think initially, kind of when you get a new crop in, I'd call it training. It's kind of a come to Jesus meeting, and it's like, look, guys, this is a big deal.
This is serious.
You've got a lot of people that worked very hard and diligently for this, and this is no time, to goof around on a scene. This is very serious. And we can goof around when we get back. We can talk, we can unwind, but trying to make them understand this is an emergency scene still. And but great conversations with them. I mean, we've been. The other cool thing is it's also self-sufficient. Which is huge for a community like ours that are dealing with economic barriers on how do you provide the care that you need. With the counseling center, they've done such a good job of building your programs up that you can figure out ways. You have people to figure out ways to make this to keep going, as long as you get the support from the fire department, from the city of Portsmouth, from the police department.
Absolutely.
It's that collaborative piece, like you're talking about, like both sides of the thing coming together to work on a solution that works. Right.